Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Encounter Sounds podcast. This will be our first podcast for 2024, and we are starting with a bang because I have a dear friend. We are spending time together here at the end of the year when we're recording this. It's a special weekend we have here at the Homestead Mobile. His family, he came here to visit and worship with us, and I want to welcome my dear friend Joe L. Barnes. How you doing, man?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh man,
I'm really, really grateful.
I'm so excited for this. We're just chatting a little bit, and conversation was so good. I'm like, we have to stop. we need to stop. Otherwise, we lose all the amazing stories. But I'm so glad you took the time, man. It's an honor for me to have you here at my house.
The privilege is mine, man. It's honor is mine. I'm grateful. Thank you for even inviting me into all of this, man.
But, man.
Yeah, that's what happens in family. You get around the table, you start talking, and you just nosedive.
So. And I have to tell you, I love worshiping with you. We had a few opportunities to do it together, and man, you fired me up.
Oh man,
I'm like, I have no more notes here, but
no, it's great, man. It's great. It's just effortless. Like I think, like-minded people, like spirits, kindred spirits, like all the things, like it's actually phenomenal to like worship together and just all the things. I don't know. It just feels natural. I think in other spaces, no shade to other spaces, but in other spaces, just it doesn't feel the same. It just doesn't hit the same. When you're around your family, it's like the pressure to like have anything like all fades because it's like it actually feels like the audience of one. Like it's not us leading worship to this group of people or to this like room of people. It's like we all feel like one collective worship team, and I think that that's why it all feels amazing. Like even last night, 30, 45 minutes of no singing at all, just the instrumentation, and we're in the thick of it, man. It's like it's unlike anything I've ever like seen or been a part of. You know what I mean? So I'm like, this is phenomenal. Anyway,
yeah, it's so special. And for me that I played an instrument, right? My previous experience is like you play a little bit here and there if there's an opportunity, and it's not like embracing the instrumental. It's not an easy thing to do,
right?
For most places, you know. But the thing I like about the instrumental is, and I've said this before, I feel like when there's lyrics, it almost like it locks you down into a specific thought, of what the song says
and concept,
right.
Yep.
And when you're in the instrumental, it gives you more freedom to basically each person goes anywhere they want to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, they can hear the whisper that God is like speaking to them individually. You know what I mean? Like, yes, there's songs that we sing and there's congregation on, and it's like you said, one thought, one concept that we're singing together. But when you just let music play, like God can say things and do things in moments that are more impactful than us singing about one concept for hours. You know what I mean? Like God can do more in that moment. He can do more in that moment of just music and just ministering to people. And you know what I mean? Like you said, the concept is targeted.
Exactly.
But then that instrumentation, God can do so much and whisper so many things to so many people in that moment because they can meet God. He can meet them wherever they are.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I love that. But man, really would love to hear your story a little bit.
Okay.
I think it's one thing that I like to do on this podcast is to learn with people's process and experience. And I think you have so much. You're very young, but I think you have a lot to bring, a lot of wisdom, and you have experienced a lot, even being young. So it's love to hear where you came from, and we can kind of go from there.
I wouldn't say that I have a lot of wisdom. I just hang around wise people. You know what I mean? I'm not very smart. I hang around smart people, and like I just kind of pick off of each of their trees.
Yeah.
No, but no, man. I'm from a small town, Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Like it's a small little town nobody really knows about. Grew up with my mom, my dad. Dad being a veteran soldier, like mom being a PK preacher's kid. Like she grew up with. She's the youngest of 10, I think. Wow. So she big family, big family, and between my parents, I'm the youngest of 6 between both of my parents, and so I'm the youngest of 6. But between all of that, like after that, it's around like 17 of us, like between like halves and steps and
Wow.
god siblings and all the things. There's a lot of us. But no, man, grew up in a really small town. House was full of music when I was a kid. I remember growing up, me and my brother, we would be in our room, and my brother Aaron's listening to hip hop. Go to my sister's room, she's listening to anything like pop or R&B. Like she was into like guy groups and boy bands and stuff. So she was listening to like everything from B2K and Chris Brown and like all of that. And then my older brother's listening to Usher and Music Soul Child and Cisco and Drew Hill. My other brother's listening to the Isley Brothers and listening to like really like old school R&B. My dad is listening to some eclectic stuff. He's listening to like Tracy Chapman and Hootie and the Blowfish, and he's listening to Boogie Down Productions and KRS-One, and he's introducing us to some like Amy Winehouse. Like he was like the out of the box kind of music listener, right? A mixture. And then my mom was listening to everything gospel: Clark Sisters, Yolanda Adams, Kirk Franklin, Fred Hammond, Israel Houghton, anything that got to do with Jesus, she's listening to that. And the only thing outside of like the gospel realm was kind of like Casting Crowns. Like that was my only grid for like CCM music when it came to like worship and stuff. So every Saturday, music is all over the house. You know what I mean? Because we're cleaning the house, and like I grew up in a culture where we play a lot of like music on, because we all had our own sections. So like somebody's responsible for cleaning the bathroom, somebody's cleaning their room, somebody's responsible for the living room, the kitchen, the laundry room, the dining room. Like we all had our sections of the house that we were scheduled to clean. So whatever room you went into during that day, there was music in their room blasting because everybody's listening to their own vibe. So music has always been a part of my life. You know what I mean? And then my mom plays piano. My brother Tiago plays piano. My brother John, songwriter. Sister Candace sings. So it's like music is kind of, everywhere.
Man. That sounds fun and exciting.
Oh yeah, man, absolutely. Everybody wanted to come to our house when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like my mom, like it was a love-hate relationship about that, because all our friends would come over on Friday nights and stay all the way till like Sunday night. And she was like, the only rule I have is if you stay in this house for the weekend, you going to church with us on Sunday. So you come over here on Friday night, Saturday night if you want to, but Sunday morning you get up, go to church. But she hated it sometimes, because she's like, I gotta step over bodies every Saturday morning to get out of the door to go to work, because we're all scattered all over the house. So for her to get through the living room, or her to get from the kitchen or whatever, it's literally we all sleep in the morning. She's going to work at like 7 a.m. We all sleep because we've been up all night playing video games, eating all the snacks, all the things. So it was a very interesting time. Yeah.
And anybody else in your family still do music, or you're the one that kind of?
No, like they love music. Like my brother John is still a songwriter. He's figuring it out, but like he's being a dad. He's being a husband. You know what I mean? He's trying to get back into music. So I'm like focusing on trying to like make opportunity if I can. But no, I think I'm the only one that's like fully invested in music right now. I think they just love music, but they haven't like invested it. Cause I think, I don't want to say like our family was kind of like cursed when it came to that, but I will say like I had cousins and siblings that wanted to do music and pursue music full time in their early years, but it just never seemed to work out. It never seemed to work. My mom was always like, you gonna sing for Jesus. If you ain't gonna sing for Jesus, it ain't gonna work. Like my brothers wanted to do like mainstream music. They wanted to do R&B and stuff like that. And my cousins, same thing. But where I'm from in Kentucky, it's very like legalistic, very by the book, very like if it ain't for God, it's for the devil, and we're not doing that. That's how they viewed it always. That's how they viewed mainstream music versus Christian music, and it was always just that black and white, cut and dry. So they always would say like, it ain't gonna work if it ain't for the Lord. So like my siblings, my cousins, when they tried to pursue music, it just never panned out. So and for a while I thought the same thing was gonna be my story as well. When I was a kid, like I avoided LA for the longest because I was always told, Los Angeles, that's the graveyard of dreams. You go there, yeah, you might not make it. And I was like, well, if I stay away from there, I can keep my dreams alive a little longer. Let me wait for LA to call me, and then I'll go to LA. Until then, I'll never see it, because I refuse to allow this thing so precious to me to die. You know what I mean? So, but when I finally went, one of my mentors, one of my people, like Amanda Cook, she was just like, most people come here expecting LA to give them something instead of depositing something. And a lot of times they leave with disappointments. They come here with hearts full of hope and pockets full of dreams. And then they leave home. They leave and go back home with broken hearts and pockets full of disappointment because they came expecting to like get something instead of deposit something. She's like, that's not how LA works. You come here, you deposit something. That's when it gives you something back. It's literally the ultimate, like you sow something, you reap something. She's like, but the things you're expecting LA to give you, they're already happening. She's like, look at your life. Like God is already opening doors and giving you opportunities. You don't need LA to do that for you. So now LA can be something actually very genuine and authentic. It could be a place you come and hang out with your friends. It could be a haven of hope. She's like, for me right now, it's a haven of healing. Like I've come here to get, like, I can be me, not me the world knows, but I can just be me and I can just heal and I can relax and I can go to the beach and I can just listen to the whispers that God is giving off the waves of the ocean and I can just breathe. I don't need it to like deposit something into me.
Yeah.
I can just literally be here and be. And I'm like, all my fears weren't there when I finally went. But
man, that's awesome.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I don't mean to monologue.
And when do you think you knew that music was the thing you wanted to do?
Oh, I've known since I was a kid, man.
Yeah.
I've known since I was 6. I knew my older brother, John, one of my biggest like inspirations as a songwriter. Like he would go to the studio. I remember I'm like 6 years old. He would go to the studio and write songs and come back with, this is showing my age. He would come back with a burned CD of what he did in the studio that day. And he would put it into the CD player and he would play like, this is what I wrote today. And seeing the joy on his face from him creating something, I'm looking at him like, that's what I want to do. I'm convinced. I want to do music. I love hearing what he created. I'm obsessed with the melodic choices he made. I'm obsessed with the lyrics he made. I didn't even understand lyrics and songwriting, but I'm obsessed. And then on my birthday, he bought me the Usher 8701 album. I had no business singing any of that music at 7 and 6 years old, but he bought me that album and I listened from top to bottom, forwards, backwards, sideways. And he saw like how obsessed I was with music. So then he bought the Confessions album after that. And we went through it together. Like he's like, all right, cool. We're about to listen to this from top to bottom together. And Confessions, all the things. We just listen to it over and over and over. And then by the time I was 13, we had started like driving back and forth between Kentucky and Atlanta because I had cousins that live in Atlanta and they had studios there. So we would go back and forth. And on the way from Kentucky to Atlanta, we're in the car with a burned CD of instrumentals and we're writing songs the entire way. He's like, what do you think about this lyric? What do you think about this concept or this angle? Like, how do you feel about this? Like, do you think this is a better lyric or this is a better approach? And that's where the beginning stages of me learning songwriting and putting the pieces together like started. So by the time we got to Atlanta, that 4-hour drive, something like that, the CD was already full of like songs. So all he had to do when he went there is put the track on and sing the record, tweak here and there. And then after that, it's we leaving back with songs that we written on the way up. And I was obsessed with the process. And I was convinced. I tell this to people from time to time. Like I think every day, everybody has this, Joe. Everybody has these defining moments in life where your life can take 2 different paths depending on the decision that you make right now. So it's 7th grade for me and I love basketball. And I had made the first round of tryouts for basketball for like my middle school basketball team. And they were like, if you make it past the first round, you're guaranteed a spot on the team. You just have to go to second round. It's a preliminary thing. You just kind of have to be there. But if you make it past first round, you're good. You just got to go to the second round. And it was my first time actually making it past the first cut. And one of my other brothers approached me and said, hey, I know you want to do that, but you can either go and do that second round or you can come with me to the studio. What do you want to do? And I was like, I'm going to the studio. Like what? That's not even a question. And I missed the second round to go straight to the studio. Don't even like the song we created. Like it's very whatever. But I think that moment was one of the defining decisions for me because I could have easily played basketball all through my high school years or my middle school and high school years, just making that one decision to go because I would have learned a lot. I would have learned a lot of different skill sets and whatever from basketball. But I'm like, I'd rather be in the studio. And I'm like, that kind of sent me down the initial course and trajectory of just being in love with music. It like defined in me like music is what I want to do the rest of my life. Basketball's cool.
Yeah.
I'd rather be in the studio.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Man, I love that thing about moments that define things.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember listening to Jonathan Hauser one time,
Mm-hmm.
and how someone came to him and asked, "Hey, how can I write songs like you write?"
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "I'm not sure you want to write songs like I write,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to understand the stories behind
Yep.
what happened
Yep.
for that song to be birthed."
Yep.
So, and of course, there are different ways to write music.
Of course.
You can sit down and you have an idea and put it down. But
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the most powerful songs usually come from dark moments or
Yep.
difficult moments.
Yep.
And I think you have something in your story that kind of was a defining moment a little bit with your family, right?
Yes.
Your brother. Is that something you're comfortable with
Yeah,
sharing?
let's get into it. So there was about like I said, I was writing songs with my brother, 13. My mom takes me on a cruise when I'm about to turn 16. Like, no, I'm about to turn 17. I'm 16. I go on a cruise. I meet this woman named Pam Morris. I'm singing on the cruise. It's a Christian cruise with a cause. And I start singing on the cruise. She owns a radio station in Orlando. We connect. She's like, when you get home, make a demo for me. I just want a demo of your music, and I'm going to try to help you like build your career. I'm like, cool, say no more. I get home, me and my brother, me and one of my older brothers, we try to sit down and create some music for the demo.
Mm-hmm.
And during that season, it was a very hard time. It was a lot of stuff. Like I'm not gonna say I was getting into a lot of trouble, but I was getting into a little bit of trouble. Like fights at school, kind of just in and out of like trouble or whatever. But my older brother, same thing. We would just get into all kind of shenanigans. But my mom comes home one day. My brother comes over. We're hanging out. All of a sudden, my mom's like, "Go check on your brother Aaron." I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'll go check on him. He's been in his room all day." You know what I mean? We played video games that day earlier, whatever. And I go check on him. And when I open the door, he had taken his life.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So this is the part of the story that people don't really know about. So like what I thought was his door slamming was the sound of the gun going off.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Right. So when I walk in the room and see like the scene, like I'm a weepy mess. My older brother loses it, like almost tries to beat a hole in the floor because he's losing it. My mom loses it. Before I know it, like my whole entire like driveway and all the way up the street full of cars, all my people are just pulling up, and I'm just looking around, and I'm like, my eyes hurt because I've wept for hours on hours on hours.
How old were you?
I was 16.
16. Wow.
So to back up a little bit, so 2009, my mom and my father get divorced. 2010, my mother has to have a surgery. She basically like loses so much blood, almost dies. And then 2011 is my brother like commits suicide. And it's just year after year, one thing after another. And I'm just like, Lord Jesus. And something interesting happened that day though. Something very interesting happened. Like I think a lot of times, this is another thing about defining moments. I think a lot of times you'll see what someone is made of in those moments. You'll see like where people stand, even in their faith and even in their like trust in God, in moments like that. Because I've seen people go through hard things and they're like, God, if you let this happen, I'll never trust you again. God, if you do this, I'll never forgive you. You know what I mean? Like I've seen people like in those moments. My mom did something very interesting though. She immediately begins to pray and runs to the Lord instead of running from him or blaming him for what happened. And I was shook because I was like, I've never seen that. I've never seen somebody run to him whenever something like this happens. I've always seen them blame him for this. And that was the day I found out where my mother was anchored. You know what I mean? I found out that my mother's like faith and trust was anchored in God, even in the midst of like the reality of now you're going to have to outlive a son. Now you're having to probably bury a son. Like, that's a different thing. Most
Oh,
people
yeah.
want to blame God for that kind of thing. And she's like, no, God, I trust you to keep us, to help us, to guide us through this very interesting and very difficult time. So for me, I'm like, I knew about the Lord then, but I didn't know him for myself. And I think that was the moment I was like, God, I need to know who this Jesus guy is for real. Because if he can get her to do that in the face of this, he can carry us through anything.
Yeah,
So
it's so powerful, because every time I hear it, when you say like, even in the death of my brother,
miracles, yeah,
miracles. Yeah, sorry.
yeah.
Man, there's something that hits you.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Because behind that small phrase, there's
A story.
there's a life. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's
a pain behind one little phrase, and I think those defining moments, when they come through music, they're very, very powerful. And it's appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that, and how that comes through your music is just amazing.
Appreciate it, man.
So now, fast forward a little bit, how did your journey into ministry and singing and your career started?
So what happened was I did an album. So all of that happened 2011, and then 2012, 2013 goes by. I'm graduating high school. We go back to the plan. I'm gonna make a record to send off to this Pam Morris, and the EP, like the demo EP, turns into like, I'm gonna create an entire project. So me and one of my older brothers, me and my brother John, we write an album. We get it done. My mom finances the album. She funds it. We get it done. We make it all a thing. We package it. 2014 comes around. After I graduated, I am working at the hospital. Some friends of mine have started traveling with a guy named Eddie James. And they called me one day and they're like, hey, would you like to travel? And I'm like, let me sit with it. But I felt God saying, like, you need to take this opportunity. Because I made a deal with my mother. I'm like, listen, I'm not going to college, but the first opportunity I get a chance to pursue music full time, I'm gone. I'm out the door. Like, I'm taking it. And she's like, okay, that's a deal. While you in this house, you're going to have to get a job. But if you want to pursue music, great. So we wrestled back and forth about it. I sat with it. And then I'm like, Ma, I really feel like God is telling me to like take this chance. She's like, okay. I put in my resignation that Friday. I work that Saturday. I don't work that Sunday, even though I was supposed to. And then I leave that Monday, meet them in West Virginia. And the goal was to be with Eddie for 2 months. I just wanted to learn what it was like to be an artist, to be in full-time ministry. And then I was going to go do my own thing.
How old were you?
I was 20. I had just turned 20. So I left and joined EJM the day after my 20th birthday. So I'm like, okay, cool. 2 months and then I'm out of here. And then that old thing is like, you want to make God laugh, tell him what you got planned. Like, that 2 months turned into a 4-year journey. Like, traveling with Eddie full time, 4 years. My first 6 months, we end up doing a 2.5 month European tour, and we're just in the thick of it, man. And then we do Philippines, Israel,
Wow,
Tel Aviv. I get baptized into Jordan. Like, we're just all over the map. And then we started doing these things called Warrior Fest, which is how I met Mark. I met Papa Mark, and even Damon came to one of the Warrior Fest. Really? And this is when Mark was with Perry Stone at the Warrior Fest. So I'm traveling and I'm doing the full-time ministry thing. I'm serving under Eddie. I'm like, whatever you need, like however. And we're traveling all over the country and into different countries, and we're just leading worship every night. I was in so many services. It was a lot. I was in church literally every day.
Wow.
Like, and sometimes 3 times on Sundays. We would do about 320 dates a year. Just,
that's insane.
There's only 365 days in a year. We were doing 320 dates a year, just in the thick of it. And man, I remember at the end of it, I had this thought. I'm like, okay, once this is over with, I'm launching in the full-time ministry. And then 2018 came around and I moved back home, and there was no like full-time ministry for me. I was just like, okay, what do I do now? And I wrestled with God. 2018, 2019, I'm like, God, you would take me around the world literally for 4 years just for me to come back and sit still in Hopkinsville and do nothing. I was depressed. I was like, God, what are we doing? What are we doing? I made friends. So me and Dante and Aaron were friends. So I'm like, all right, cool. I'm going to move. I moved to Columbus, Georgia, where Dante was based. He was a worship pastor out there. And Aaron, we all moved into a single wide trailer. Dante's on one side, Aaron's on one side. I'm in the living room on the couch, just literally couch surfing for a year. And then moving from that single wide to an apartment in 2019. But that was also the same year that Dante snuck me into a Mav writing camp. And he's like, all right, he's like, there's about 40 people, 60 people in and out for the next 3 days. They won't even know you're not supposed to be there. Just blend in. I'm like, okay, cool. So I go, I'm attached to his hip the first day because I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm in all his sessions with him, whatever. Second day, I branch out and I go do my own sessions. My first session of my second day, I'm with a guy named Carrington Gaines, a girl named Kayla Alvarado, and her now husband, Manuel. So we're in there, we're talking. They're like, well, where is everybody at? Where are you at in the season? What do you believe in God for? And they asked me and I'm like, man, I'm ready to see the things that God promised me. Like I have prophecies I've been holding on for 2-3 years and I haven't seen anything. And I'm like, I'm just ready to see those things. And then the next person's like, yeah, same. I just been in this season where I'm like, God, I trust you, but it's hard today. And we go around the room and everybody's in the same place. And then we decide we need to write something that'll give us hope in the waiting season. Because the waiting definitely gets hard. And that was the day that we wrote Promises.
Wow.
Right. And then the camp ends. They're like, we do a thing called song share. So we share the song and people are like, this is different. Okay. I like this. Fast forward, we're tweaking, we're picking lyrics, we're whatever from that June all the way till January. We recorded
What
January.
year was that?
This is 2019.
2019.
Yeah, 2019. So 2020 comes around and they're like, we're going to record it in January. I'm like, cool. At this time I knew I was moving to Covington. So this time I knew I was going to move because during that time of 2019, I'm driving back and forth between Columbus, Georgia and Covington, Georgia. Cause I called Papa Mark and I'm like, I need to walk with you. Cause I'd watched one of Damon's servants, Born to Be Wild. And I'm a mess, shook. And I'm like, then right after that, I'm seeing Mark everywhere. And I'm like, I'm connected with that man. I need to find out who he is. So I reach out to him on Facebook or something. We exchange numbers. I call him. I'm like, something's gotta change. There has to be something more out here. I just listened to this Born to Be Wild message and I'm a mess. I heard him talk about the compass. It's like, we're in the season where we don't follow maps, we follow compass. And I'm shook. And I'm like, where are you at? How do I connect? Let's talk. And he's like, yeah, man, let's just keep the conversation up. Let's talk. I drive down 2018. We sit in the square in Covington. And he's like, it's dangerous to talk to me. Before I know it, I'm literally on my face in his office. Cause he's just pouring in revelation about God and truths that I'm like, that fly in the face of everything I believed, just shattering my whole world. I'm like, thank you, God. And I was wrong. So then 2019, I'm texting him, asking questions. Sometimes he would answer, sometimes he wouldn't. You know what I mean? It was just this back and forth. By the end of 2019, God was like, you need to call Mark and tell him you're moving. And I was like, okay. So 2020 comes around. I know I'm moving to Covington. We record Promises in January. I moved to Covington in February. I'm on an air mattress. It's cold outside. I have a space heater to keep me warm. I have these 2 little blankets that I have to put in layers to try to keep my body warm because they only cover half my body. I have a trash bag full of sneakers, a suitcase full of clothes, and that's it. My phone, that's it. I'm at the bottom. You know what I mean? And before I know it, Promises comes out in April. And by the end of April, May, it 4 or 5 million views. And I'm like, what is happening? For the end of the year, it has 20 million views. And I'm like, wow, what is happening? Literally next thing you know, opportunity after opportunity, income after income. I didn't know I was going to pay my rent at the top of the year. By the bottom of the year, like everything's different. I have to do taxes because I'm like, I have no idea how any of this stuff is happening. The interesting thing is that the night before Promise is released on Instagram, because it came out on Instagram, then it came out on Tribal, and then it came out on YouTube. The night before it came out on Instagram, my mom called me. She was like, "Why don't you just move back home, baby? Just come do your music back here." And I'm like, "Ma, I can't. Like, there's nothing there. There's no opportunity for music in Kentucky. Nobody there wants to do music. My hometown is very small, and they don't have any big dreams. At least back then they didn't." And I'm like, you got one car and you got to go to work. How am I supposed to get anywhere near where the music is? Because I'm like, the closest city that has music is Nashville. And that's an hour away. And I don't even know anybody. I don't even know where to begin out there. I'm like, but even after that, I don't feel like God would lead me to Covington in February just for me to move in April back home. That don't make sense. I'm like, I'm going to stick it out. And I remember that night, I'm like, God, okay, let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself. So that Sunday, Mark preached a message and told this very specific detail. He said, peach trees have the ability to produce fruit in the first year that they're planted. But the vine dresser will pinch the buds for the first year to 2 years, because while it can produce fruit, it isn't strong enough to carry or bear the weight of the fruit that it's called to carry. So in the wrong season, and if you allow the fruit to grow prematurely, what you're called to carry will kill you. It would actually like tear you apart. So me thinking that, I'm like, okay, God, you liken us to trees all the time. Cool. So this is what I need. I don't need you to give me an entire tree right now. You can pinch every bud that you want to. I just need you to let one piece of fruit grow so that I can show my mother, my siblings, my friends that the path that you have me on works. You give me one piece of fruit, you can pinch all the rest of the buds until you're ready and you think I'm strong enough to bear the weight. I go to bed that night. The next morning, Promises comes out on Instagram. Within a week, it has 150,000 views. A week after that, it drops on Tribal. And then a week after that, it drops on YouTube. 2 weeks goes by, 1 million views. Month goes by, 4 million. End of the year, 20 million. And I'm just like, God, if this was one piece of fruit, I am scared to see what you do with an entire tree.
Wow.
Terrified.
Yeah.
It's just one thing after another. And then now I'm looking back and over the last 3 years, 4 years, and I'm like, it's interesting that everything that, like, every opportunity I've had or everything that's come from that moment, I'm like, I didn't invite myself into this and I didn't put myself in these places. You orchestrated it. You put me in the right places at the right times.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's none of this is any credit to me. I didn't do this. I couldn't have worked hard enough to get these opportunities. I couldn't have grinded. I couldn't have sacrificed. And I'm like, God, you literally are orchestrating it. I just literally showed up to where you wanted me to be at. It's the craziest thing. So I'm just very like hands off. I'm like, I'm gonna let you drive because you know what you're doing.
Now, one thing you mentioned that I think it's important for, I think, other artists to understand the value of having a spiritual father.
Absolutely.
Right. And I would love you to touch on that because, you know, a lot, like you mentioned, that how that message spoke to you and how you got connected. And it, especially in the experience you're having now, you know, your songs are blowing up, you're getting well known, and there's so much opportunity. And we were talking earlier about saying yes and no and things like that.
Yeah.
But for you, what's the difference of having a spiritual father that can help you navigate this? Because especially someone like Mark that has experience, success and big ministry and all that kind of stuff, and then be able to help you navigate. I'd love to hear a little bit on that from your point, your side.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing. I moved to Covington because I asked God, I'm like, God, there's things that I see coming. And I'm like, to think I could do it on my own is actually like ridiculous to think. But I'm like, God, one day I want to be a husband and one day I want to be a father. And in order to do that, I need to submit under someone that does it well. Not just tell me, let me look at your life and see it for myself. let me come around and hang around you and the wife and the kids and see how you guys function. Because what I learned from just looking around the industry before I'd ever stepped into it, I learned that a lot of the people that I like looked up to, like as far as heroes in music, they were married and divorced very quickly. They didn't really have relationships with their like families like that. And I'm like, that's interesting. Like, not to be like whatever, but like looking at like someone like Quincy Jones, successful in his career, majorly, like has written and composed some hits. Like he's worth 500 million today from what he's done, but he was married and divorced 4 times. I was like, nope, don't want that. Looking at our heroes like Billy Graham, literally the pastor of presidents and officials and artists and actors, everything. But would be gone so long he wouldn't recognize his daughter when he come home. Like it's like successful in their careers, not so much in their relationships. And I was like, God, I don't really want that. So if success is going to change me to where I can't be present with my family, then I'd rather have my family than to be successful. So I think that fathering, mentorship, submitting to authority helps you navigate how to do both. That you can be successful in your career without having to sacrifice your family along the way. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So even if it's not like you lost your family like physically, there are some people that's like they're successful in their career to the point that their kids want nothing to do with what they do. If you think about the Old Testament, a lot of times if you were the son of a carpenter, you became a carpenter. The son of a blacksmith, you became a blacksmith. Like this was the family business and the family trade. Like it's usually why like I love when apostles started talking about like the kiss, the ring and the robe, and how the like ring represents like you can now do business as the father, because you would take over the family business. A lot of times it's very rare that the son takes over the business that the father is doing now. You know what I mean? Even Jesus, he's like, I'm about my father's business. Like that's usually how it's supposed to go. But most of the time in the day and age we live in, if a guy is an artist or a songwriter or whatever, their kids don't want to do nothing because this business took you away from me. Yeah. Most times that they're a pastor, their kids don't want to have nothing to do with the church. They're like, the church took my father away from me. He was my pastor at home instead of my father at home. You see what I'm saying? So I think I'm like, God, I don't want my children to know me as a man on a stage with a mic. I want them to know me as their father. I don't want my wife to know me as a man that's distant and on a stage and always I want her to know me as a husband. So I said yes to covering because I'm like, teach me that. Teach me that. I don't want to lose my family in the process of success. I'd much rather have my family at the end of all of this, because music is unpredictable. And whenever you do something in music, they'll love you today and hate you tomorrow. They'll love your music right now. Yeah. You make a mistake that they don't agree with, especially with cancel culture today. Cancel him and they'll listen to any music that he's done. It's just like, but you had encounter to the music last week and now the music is bad. Like that doesn't make sense to me anyway. But I think that in music, it depends on what you think is successful. Exactly. I think I heard someone say, if you want to know what success is when your children are adults, they still want to hang with you. That's when you're successful.
Isn't it crazy how, especially in the celebrity world, you know, people look up to celebrities and you see, okay, this guy, like you said, divorced 4 times, the kids want nothing to do, but he's rich and famous, and people say, I want that.
He's successful. Right. They're like, he's so successful.
Exactly.
Nope.
Exactly.
Nope. So he is not.
We need a redefinition of what success is.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, it's a good point of view from you, because you were experiencing kind of both sides of the coin. Even I would say 3 sides, because I would say you're experiencing this like a real family, a spiritual father, and learning what rich is, right? And then you are experiencing success in ministry, in music, in career, which is awesome. And also you having being able to see the other side of the secular world as well, and what that looks like. And I think you were talking about a little bit of the story of Graham. I think that it would be great for you to share that a little bit. But now that you see all this, like what does success like, how do you define success at your stage right now with experiencing family, experiencing success with your music and your career growing, and you're seeing the secular? How do you see success?
I think for me, I don't judge success based off the numbers anymore. I think in the beginning, I would have judged success off of how major or massive or how far the music goes, at least for me. But I don't think I judge it off of that anymore. I think now I learned this thing from like John Bellion, and I kind of just adopted it. It's like called Feed the 25. And he's like, and the concept is the basic like principle of it is that a lot of my peers, they want to reach the masses. They want to do tours in front of 250,000, 25,000 people. You know what I mean? They want to sell at the Garden. I think that's great. But the concept of Feed the 25 is, do you want to entertain 25,000, or do you want to feed and nurture 25 people for a lifetime? Jesus had 12 that he did life with. Reach the masses was everywhere, but he did life with the 12, and those 12 went on to do more. You know what I'm saying? You hear more stories about the 12 than you do about the masses that he like fed and like broke bread with and did the miracles for. You know what I mean? Like, you hear more about the 12. You see what I'm saying? So I think I now judge success off of, is the music going to get to who it needs to? I would much rather see the same 25 people for my life and watch them grow. Because it's like, if I can't reach the 25 people that I'm around on a daily basis, the people that see me off the platform, that come to the house and we break bread, I have no business trying to entertain the 25,000 that'll come and see me for 2 to 3 hours on a tour. Like, I like, when it comes to the kingdom, which one is going to weigh more? You see what I'm saying? It's like, we're going to like say, well, I did this for 10 years. I toured and did all of that. That mattered. That didn't matter because your wife needed you at home. You know what I'm saying? Like, it brings a whole new definition of charity begins at home. That love begins at home. Because if your wife and your children at home need you, why are you trying to like save the world? Like, Jesus already did that. God already like reconciled the world to himself. You don't have to go and save the world. He already did that. You don't only have to save your family, but you do have to, like, you give yourself to your family. You see what I'm saying? So I think that's what I would say is successful to me. I think in music though, like, music getting to where it needs to, you know what I mean? Like, music it's a universal language. Like, there are people that don't speak a lick of English, but can give you every Beyonce lyric, every like Michael Jackson lyric. They can give you the whole like dance routine, you know what I mean? But I think that it's an impactful tool, and you can sing things that you can't really say. I was talking to my girlfriend about this today. It's interesting that like, if you say certain things, like Apostle and Mark will say things like, be careful not to rip the wineskin. If you preach a message, you can be in danger of tearing the wineskin. But somehow, if you sing that same message, it translates completely different. I think the melodies and the music, God somehow made that what Ty Tribbett calls the anesthesia. Like, the music kind of like softens the blow of that truth coming into your world. You know what I mean? So I think that there are truths that can be woven into like song form, and it'll be delivered a lot better. So I think that if you can get a message or a truth or a revelation about the Lord in the song and get it to his people, that's successful.
And go much further, I think.
It could go much further. You know what I mean? Like, it's not about the numbers. It's not about how massive the tours are. It's not about any of that stuff. Like, and when I was working with Mav, I told one of the owners, I'm like, what made Mav successful is that not because Mav had big stages. It wasn't the lights. It wasn't the things. It was the fact that in a time when no one could gather, we were able to turn people's living rooms into their sanctuaries.
Oh, yeah.
They could cut on their TVs, go to YouTube, and God would show up. And I'm like, God used pandemic to remind us that, like, you don't need the four walls of a church. Like, the church is not a building. It's a people. And we can be connected even if we're in our living rooms. Like, I would rather be at your houses than for you to just try to come to this concrete and like plywood and this sheet wall. Like, I'd rather you come to this box over here that's miles away from your house. I would much rather live in your closet in your bedroom. I would much rather live in your living room, in your kitchen, like at your dinner table. I would much rather like infiltrate the walls of your household and your address. And I'm like, that pandemic was a reminder that God will meet us there. You know what I mean? Instead of you having to like, well, I can only get to God if I go there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because that reinforces that kind of perspective enforces the lie that there's separation between me and God. That the only time I can connect to him is when I go to his address and go to his house, instead of like, no, he lives here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that season, man, the music you guys recorded during that season, during COVID, not just Maverick, but the music you guys did with Elevation, man, that was so special, man. So special. I don't know how, like you be playing 24 hours in my house. So it's one thing that I really love about worship music, or just not worship music at all, but overall, is the difference between just being a musician or a singer and being a worshiper.
Yeah.
Because the feedback you get is different. One is like, man, you play so cool, or you sing amazing, and the other one's like, man, that song did something that changed my life.
I'm sorry. And that's what I think is successful.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? It's like, no, this song changed my life. That's like, I'm like, that's the goal.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not trying to like entertain you and distract you from, I'm trying to create something that God can now use to meet with you, and then you're changed forever. See, like, I think Stephanie Gretzinger talks about this, and she says that like, we build our altars where we believe there's water, right? Concept being like, the first time altar is ever mentioned is when Noah steps off the ark after the flood and says, God, I'm going to remember where you brought me from, and I'm going to worship. Then later on transcends into like a place for the remission and the cleansing of sin. You burn the sacrifice, and it's a cleansing, right? But the original concept of an altar is a meeting place with the Lord. The veil tears, symbolizing no more separation. Now God can meet us anywhere, right? Altars can now be your living room couch. It can now be the piano you sit at in your house. It could be your shower head it can be your steering wheel, or it can now be in the form of a song. So now Stephanie says we build songs, and those are our altars that we get to use to meet with the Lord. Because you can take a song anywhere. You can sing anywhere, and it can be an altar that you use to meet with the Lord. Sometimes, she said, sometimes God chooses to breathe on that altar and turn it into a table for the world to come and meet with him, commune, dine, all the things. And I think that it's so important. Like, that's successful. If I can create a altar in the form of a song for God to use to meet with you, that's successful to me. You know what I'm saying? And I think, I want to say this. Yeah, I'll just say that. Like, I think like it's really, really important. Like, I think that's what I'm always trying to do. Oh, that's what I was trying to say. She also said that Jesus told her, I'm much better at being found and discovered than you are at introducing me. So I'm no longer trying to write songs to introduce the Lord. I'm trying to create songs and create music where he can be found and discovered. So
I read this book one time. It's by this lady called Anna Roundtree, and she shares a lot of experiences that she has having visitations in heaven, things like that. But there's one thing in that book that really changed my perspective with worship, because she says that every time you are in that environment, you can always hear music, and you can see frequency of worship, and that frequency, it's going towards a specific place, which is the throne.
yes.
And anytime you want to visit the throne, all you need to do is to hop on that frequency. So it's in the way it shifted for me is like, all you're trying to do is, we're trying to go to the throne as worshipers. And can our frequency become that trolley, let's say, that people can hop on?
Yes.
and go to the throne. It's not about us. It's
Right.
not about our music,
Right.
but it's about a frequency that's connecting with the
Yes.
throne. And can we help people join that frequency so they can get there?
Absolutely.
You know, so anytime you want to go to the throne to worship him face to face,
Yes.
can your frequency help do
Yes.
that? And
Yes.
I think I would say that's success.
That's success.
You know what I mean?
That's success. Amanda Cook said this. She said that sometimes we write songs and sometimes we inherit songs that were given to us from someone on the other side of eternity that's been looking at him in the face a lot longer than we have.
Wow.
So sometimes we inherit a frequency.
Yeah.
From someone that's been looking him in the face a lot longer. They've had a millennia to look at him. And then they give us songs to sing that will carry us, like you said, on the frequency to the throne to see his face.
Wow.
Yeah, man. It's good. It's good to me. It's good to me.
Now, a couple more things that I would love to talk about. One is just, I've heard you saying this in other places about that you also, you love doing worship music,
Yes.
but you also love music in general, you know, and with all the influence you had with all the different music in your house, how do you see this? Because I think church tends to separate things. Mm-hmm. This is holy, this is not holy, this is secular, this is worship.
Right.
And I'm getting to the understanding that, first of all, we are doing life. Mm-hmm. What God wants us is doing life with him.
Yes.
And life with him is in the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And even when I think about my heroes in the Bible, one big hero that I have is Joseph.
Yep.
Joseph, for me, his story just talks to me. And when I think about Joseph, all he knew about God, he learned at home with his dad.
Yep.
And his experience with his family wasn't great, right? And then he gets sold as a slave to this country that he doesn't know the language.
Yep.
Nobody believes in God.
Right.
He's by himself in prison, and then he ends up being the governor. But everything he did is secular, right? And it's his personal experience with God. Then he's in the secular world, and everything we talk about his life is secular.
Yeah.
And somehow we created a separation where, we have the church, the life in church, and then we have secular. Right. And for musicians, even harder, because, we cannot sing this or that, or this style, there's all this mess. How do you, let's say, with the understanding we're learning about doing life with the Lord and everything's holy, where's your music going? Like, can you not just I'm a worshiper or just do worship music. I do music. How would you say, would you record stuff that we consider not worship, or just like in that vein?
Yeah. I would say this. I think first my understanding of it all is all music was created by God. Every style, every genre created by God, for God. Yeah. Like, sure, because we're man, we're not perfect. There are people that are going to step out of boxes or do and say things that are not becoming or aren't really like pleasing to like the heart of the Father. Like we have, like, we'll figure it out. You know what I mean? But I think to throw away an entire genre or an entire space of music is actually very dangerous, because there are certain spaces that certain like frequencies can go to that other frequencies can't.
Yeah.
Because every frequency has its purpose. Mark told me a story about how there was these two men that had a sound that they tried to bring to the church, and the church at that time refused it. They said, no, we don't want that. That's not our way. And then he said those two men went on to birth Woodstock. So, which was basically the beginning and the sexual revolution. He said, but the sound of that music was brought to the church first, and the church refused it and said no. And then in their rejection, that sound went on and was then passed down and was given and created and birthed the sexual revolution. And he said he could actually take you point for point where it's actually a perverted version of the outpouring of the Holy Spirit.
Wow.
He said if the church would have accepted it, it wouldn't have been Woodstock, the sexual revolution. It would have been the outpouring of the Holy Spirit in music because of the frequency that was given. They were supposed to inherit something and they refused the inheritance. But I think God has a way of infusing his spirit in the frequencies. You know what I mean? Like, I think some of the greatest worship leaders in the world are actually in mainstream music. I personally, I'm like, if you think about it, there are some people that I'm like, you were born to worship. You carry the frequency of heaven. You just don't know it yet. You know what I mean? Or you just aren't even aware of it. Like, you can't tell me that Phil Collins didn't carry the frequency of heaven.
Yeah.
For him to write something like, you'll be in my heart, you'll be in my heart from this day on now and forevermore. Like, you can't tell me that that's not, that God isn't breathing on something like that. Like, there are certain songs and certain frequencies I'm like, you inherited this frequency. It's just who you are. It's in your makeup and in your DNA. So with that being said, I'm like, I try my best to live and create out of a space of, and all music that comes from me, God is in it. Whether if it's mainstream or if it's worship or whatever, because me and my girlfriend talk about this, and she actually corrected me one time because I was like, I'm just gonna live life, and whenever God wants to interrupt me, he'll tap me on the shoulder and invite me, and I'll leave everything I have right then on the spot, and I'll wherever he wants to go. And she was like, you know what, Joe? That sounds great. But if you live an integrated life, you'll never have to live an interruptible one.
That's good.
Right. Right. If you live an integrated life, you'll never have to live an interruptible one. Like, you're only having to live interrupted because you're not integrated. If you integrate God into everything you're doing, whether that's creating like worship or mainstream music, if he's integrated in all of it, you'll be surprised what comes out. You'll be surprised what God does with the frequency. So I think in creating, and for me at least, when I'm creating, I'm going to allow God to infiltrate all of it.
Yeah.
He's going to be integrated into all of it. So if I'm writing something that is like promises or miracles or altar, any of that stuff, he'll be integrated into that. If I'm writing something with 808s and trap drums, he'll be integrated into that because all of it, it's for his good pleasure. And it's for him to carry whatever the message is, whatever the frequency he wants to get, because it goes to a certain group of people. Like, he can be all things to all men at all times. So I'm not going to like limit him and say, God, you can only move in the parameters of this worship record. Exactly. No, God, you can move in these 808s, in this trap drum. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's, for me, I'm like, I'm open-handed about all of it, because I can't say, who am I to tell you that you can't do something with this?
Exactly.
That doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah.
Like, so that's my thoughts on it.
Man, that's awesome. Man, I think this is a great place for us to kind of start wrapping up.
Cool.
I'm so grateful you took the time. I think you have a very unique way to worship that's very inspiring. The lyrics, the music you write, it's incredible. It's an honor, man. And one thing that I think you have that's very powerful is your sound is unique. You know, you're one of those guys that you hear and you know who's singing. You know, I think you have that, and I love that in you. But would love to know, what are you up to? You know, what's coming up for you this 2024, and what your plans, dreams, anything you can share or you want to share with us?
I'm just trying to love on the fam, you know, be present, be intentional. I mean, yeah, there's an album coming. I'm working on an album. It's literally, we're in the mixing stages now. Yeah. So when we get off here, I'll show you some stuff. Okay. But we're wrapping this stuff up. I mean, I signed with a label. I never thought I would, but we did. Just navigating like the music side, and, you know, Pop has been helping me like work through like, this is where we have to figure out what takes like precedent, what takes priority. I'll say this and I'll shut up. Rita Springer looked at me and said, Joe, do you want a royalty check or do you want to raise the dead? And I I was like, ooh, can we do both? And she was like, yes, you can do both, but one has to be the priority. She's like, I was like, okay, then let's raise the dead. And if a royalty check comes with that, great. So I think now my focus in creating, I'm like, I want to write songs that raise the dead. I want to create things that raise the dead, whether that's spiritually or literally.
Yep.
Like I want to do that. And if royalty checks come from that, great. So I think I'm just in a space where I'm open-handed. God can do what he wants. He can tell me where to go and I'm there. Tell me what to write and I'll write it. Tell me what to sing and I'll sing it. And there's some stuff coming, but we'll just see what happens. I have no idea. I'm just letting God have his way in 2024. Amen.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Do you have a date from when the album's coming out?
I do not have a date yet. I don't have a date yet, but soon.
Soon?
I'll have a date.
Okay. That's exciting. Any final thoughts for people that are listening? And how can people connect with you if they want to connect with you?
Final thought. If you're called to full-time ministry, you need a spiritual father. I'm telling you, it'll change your life. Someone to tell you no will change your life. But not just to tell you no, but just to give you like counsel and wisdom and insight. You know what I mean? Spiritual fathering isn't to try to control your life. It's to just, give you an extra set of eyes and ears and, you know what I mean? An extra like place to lean so that like you're not out here by yourself. So if you're called to full-time ministry, whether that's ministry in the Big C church or ministry in the mainstream market, I think like submit to authority. It'll change your life. Other than that, man, love God, love your family, and live life to the fullest, I guess. And those are my final thoughts about all of this. I'm really grateful that you had me here. Like this has been a really special day for me,
man.
Yeah, from breakfast until now, all of it. It's been great.
And if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to do it?
I'm on Instagram. I am Joe_L. That's all my platforms: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook is Joel Barnes, YouTube Joel Barnes. I mean, if you want to listen to the music, Spotify, Apple Music, Joel Barnes, you can just find all the stuff there, man. But that's it.
Awesome, man. I love you big time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And excited for tonight.
Oh man, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm gassed now. Let's do it.
Thanks so much. Love you, man.
Love you.